This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are talking about college basketball, specifically the Final Four, the national title game, as well as how did UConn win back-to-back titles in the last 2 years when we thought everything was even. And then we're talking about Caitlin Clark and honoring her career, and is she truly the best women's basketball player we have ever seen? And then we finish up by talking about John Calipari leaving to go to Arkansas, and is baseball ruining the game, specifically when it comes to pitcher injuries. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben, that's Josh, and we are here talking about the chaos of the sports world. I think Josh and I were talking about how it's just fun to talk about crazy things every once in a while. But Josh, before we get into that, how was your weekend? Did you do anything fun, or was it just kind of chill in the Burris household?
It was my weekend to work, man. So I just finished this morning, but got these next 2 days off. Did manage to get away and watch the second half of the men's basketball championship, though, which we'll be kicking the show off with the UConn-Purdue matchup, which we predicted from our Final Four preview the week before, with a champion of UConn becoming the first team since 06-07 Florida to win back-to-back natties. And they did it in typical UConn fashion too, which we'll discuss. But before we get to that, your weekend, bud, how did it go?
You know, it was good. Nothing crazy went on. Did some just chill things, I guess. We have our first football game coming up. It's a rematch of the semifinal. We lost last year by 1 point, or like one touchdown. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this coming weekend. Then I'll have spring break next week, but yeah, it's gonna be a big game. It's my first official game as an offense coordinator, so we're stepping up to the big guns. So tonight I actually just came from practice as we're recording this, and it's kind of cool. You know, we had a couple of Americans coming in playing for us, so it's kind of fun. Yeah, I've enjoyed the speed of the weekend, I guess.
All right. Football season kicking off. Yeah.
It's weird though. It is so weird though. Like I tell people, I'm so used to spring being like basketball and then like baseball starts. And then every year, like now that I'm coaching football here in Hungary, obviously I have the fall junior season, but then always our adult seasons in the spring. It's so weird sometimes for my head, you know, but no, it is what it is. It is what it is. But hey, let's talk basketball.
Yeah. So this national championship game, it's been on par with how a lot of UConn's games have gone lately. I think they were up only 4 on Bama and then won that game by double digits, and they were only up 5 on Illinois in the lead 8, and then rattled off that 30-0 run right there. And at halftime here, they were up 36-30, and then ended with a 75-60 win. Zach Edey ended up getting his last game of his big-time college career there, 37 points, 10 rebounds, but he didn't get a lot of help from anybody else, Ben. Next high score was 12, and then nobody else got in double figures. Meanwhile, on the UConn side, you had 4 guys scoring double figures. Leading scorer was Tristan Newton. No surprise there. Watching what's his name? Dalton Klingen?
Yeah.
Donovan Klingen.
Yeah.
I know that Edey got 37 and 10, but I was like, all he needs to do is let him get 30-10, not 40-20. Watching them go at it was kind of fun. Klingen ended up with 11 and 5, so not as big of a night, but still got hit some of his and contributed. But Matt Painter said that UConn just smothers you defensively, and I think that's what's always conducive to these large runs that they go on. Because you think about it, 75 points in a game isn't that much, but when you can hold Purdue to 60, I mean, and that's the minimum you got to score. That really helps.
I think, to be honest, their game plan was like, okay, yeah, Zach Edey, get what you want, like go get yours. That's fine. We're going to shut down everyone else. And I believe that's what, and again, I don't know that that's UConn's plan. Josh doesn't know if that was UConn's plan, but it was very obvious to me that they're like, okay, yeah, we're probably not going to be able to stop him, right? He's going to get his 30 and 10 or his 35 and 10. But I think they were okay with that. They're like, okay, you go do you. We're going to block out everyone else. We're going to make everyone else's life miserable. And look, you know it as well as I do, Josh. You watch basketball as much as I have. Look, the teams that have, you know, it reminds me of high school, right? Like, yeah, sometimes you can get away with having a really good player, but against those really good teams like a UConn, you can't just have one dude carry your team. And in a way, like you've mentioned it, I think you mentioned a few times this year where Purdue seemed like to be like a one-headed monster. There wasn't other offshoots they could go to, and it was very obvious in this game that they really needed a second scorer on that team that could go out and get their 35 and do that. And give credit to UConn. I mean, UConn came out with a game plan, and at times it looked shaky, but I think UConn did something that I think a lot of teams, I think, prove that you can do with Purdue is let Zach get his, and then you kind of try to shut down everyone else. And when you do that, you have a good chance of beating Purdue.
Yeah. Uh, I guess Purdue's been one of the better three shooting teams in the country. They shot just 1 of 7, 14% from there. UConn shot him better at the free throw line. They actually got more rebounds, even though that tallest player on the floor was on the Purdue side. So, yeah, heck of a job by UConn. It's going to be interesting seeing what this team does next year. They do have 3 seniors, and I don't know if anyone else that's underclassmen is going to go to the draft, but Dan Hurley's got a real good thing going on over there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the interesting thing for me though, Josh, is that like we haven't seen, I guess on the men's side, outside of I guess back in UCLA's days, right, where they won like 5 straight or where it was.
Back when the NCAA was a total of 12 teams.
Yeah, and I also don't think that, to be honest with you, that even if you look at Florida's team, right, like I don't know if I hope he can, right, but I don't know if we're going to see another dynasty, but because I guess the way that this whole world of college sports works now, but I think Hurley's proven that he can develop whether you give him all 5 stars or you give him guys that have never really were looked at in high school. And so I think that's what makes this more interesting than I think any other situation we've had in the past. And obviously he's come out and said that he's turning down Kentucky job, and certain things like that. But man, I look at this UConn team and like I don't see them slowing down. Like I think they've built a culture that is a winning culture that's willing to say, we're gonna try to stick with the game plan the best we can and what our goals are. And I think that really helps.
Yeah, that was the one thing that stood out to me at the end of it all is now we've seen them go on these runs back to back seasons. We're in the transfer portal in the NIL era where you can't really build deep rosters anymore like some of the older Kentucky teams did, or even like Duke or Carolina. Like you can't have a very deep roster because kids want to play now so that they can go and cash in on
Yeah.
the NIL. So the field in theory is a lot more level playing field. But then you look at a team like UConn here and they're just so far and ahead of everybody else that since the month of March they've only gotten into 2 games where they didn't win by double figures. Like they just dominate you
Yeah,
in an
it's
era
scary,
where it's
man.
supposed to be all even. Yeah.
But I think that goes back to though, Josh, is the classic style of coaching, right? Developing, right? Like as coaches, as someone who is a coach right now, the goal is to develop, right? It's not necessarily, and you can do that while you're winning. I think a lot of people think developing happens, and it's you're probably going to lose because you're developing young guys. But no, like they've figured out a formula that works, and I'm telling you, I think the bet's on favorite to win it next year. Like tell me a team right now in America, Josh, that you go, they're better than UConn. There is none. And UConn's getting, yeah, they're going to lose some guys, but dude, teams like this, they just know how to reload, and it's scary to think that if women's UConn stays the way it is and men's UConn becomes the way it is, it's just not going to be very fun to watch women's basketball and men's college basketball for a while.
Yeah, UConn. Actually, I think ESPN put out their like way too early favorites for next year, and Duke is #1 right now, which
Okay.
I could see, but I don't know how UConn wouldn't be in that discussion. I found this other fun little tweet here that I'm going to try to find and read on here too. It's
Yeah.
from what's his name from Barstool's college football show. On to say roughness, Jack McGuire. So if you don't listen to their show, they're mostly college football, but Jack is a big UConn fan. He roots for their football, unfortunately, but
Oh,
also gets to
jeez.
be a UConn basketball
Yeah.
fan. And this is something that he put out about what he's observed from the team or from the school. Nothing about what has happened at UConn makes sense. Go to stores. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's cold for 80% of the school year. Never has been the best school in its own state. It came out of nowhere. Both the men's and the women's had really no success before 1990. Since then, they've won 17 times in a farm town that has a drug problem in between two of the biggest cities in America. There's nothing you can compare it to. It was created out of nowhere by two coaches talking about Jim Calhoun and uh, Gene over on the women's side,
Yeah,
whose
yeah.
last name escapes me, but two coaches who hate each other. The whole state has benefited from it. UConn became a better school. Just look at the campus now. Really special stuff.
Yeah, UConn reminds you of, I think like I guess the way he described it, right? Like I feel like if I look at Ohio, right? Like some of these small public high schools or whatever that they come out of nowhere and they win a state title and then they become this like legacy type of school. Uh it's kind of cool. Like it's just cool to hear story. Like that's what I love about sports, man. Like you have these little stories that unless you grew up in that area or you understand the school, like for us, we just look at UConn as a team that is dominated for the last
They've
15, 20
won like
years.
5 or 6 national championships
Yeah.
on the men's side in our lifetime.
Yeah, so like for us that like that's what we see, but we don't see the behind the scenes like how like they said, it's a middle of nowhere, it's kind of like what's going on here and that's what's very interesting I guess for me to think about is how you look at Calhoun and you look at what Gene's done on the women's side. It's like they really taken a two programs that were basically nothing and have turned them into something pretty incredible.
So to wrap up the men's tournament, Ben, overall thoughts
Yeah.
on how this tournament was compared to ones in
Well,
years past. I think we got polar opposites from last year to this year. Last year we had a Final Four with like a 4, 5, 8, and 9 seed in there, something like
yeah.
that. This year it's mostly teams that you'd expect to be there, with the exception of NC State getting this far. But we talked
Yeah.
about it as the rounds went on. There wasn't as many upsets in this one. A lot of the big teams did manage to take care of business, and I think it made for a lot of like very exciting games down the stretch.
Yeah, like I enjoyed this tournament. I hated my bracket. Like my bracket sucked, but that's normal for me. Um, I guess it became more like what real basketball is, right? Like the best team, the better teams have been winning. And I think that's what makes it fun. Like it's I know I hate people are gonna hate when I say this, but it's nice to see a number one seed win in the tournament. Like you should. You're the number one seed. Like you are a number one seed. You should win the tournament, right? And I think
Hmm.
we've gotten so used to like enjoying the number threes that win it all or the number twos. Like, look, if we're looking at reality, the number one seeds should be the four best teams that finish out the tournament. But that's what makes March Madness so crazy and so awesome. So for me, I just think that this year's tournament I think was more enjoyable in the sense that yeah, you had some upsets, but it was more natural, I think, games where I didn't feel like it was just upset city and it was everything was balanced. I still felt there was some unbalance, which I think is good in college basketball. You shouldn't have it all at the same level. So for me, that those are my thoughts.
Yeah, like think about UConn's path to get here. So as a 1 seed, they're obviously going to play a 16, and
Yeah.
then they're either going to play an 8 or 9. They played the 9. Then they're either going to play, the highest is a possible 4. They played the 5, so pretty close. And then they were going to play either a 2 or a 3 at the
Well,
highest, and they played a 3. Then they get to play Alabama in the Final Four, and then they meet Purdue
mhm.
in the Natty at number 1. And now I'll read you off Purdue's path to get here because it's kind of similar. With the exception of NC State in the Final Four, they had to go through and play. It was number 2 Tennessee, number 5 Gonzaga, number 8 Utah State. So like out of all the highest seeds that they could have been playing, they were playing like all of them. So it was like they had to earn their way to get here, I feel
Yeah.
like, and it made up for, like I said, a lot of good games down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes look and we've said it too, Josh, is like that's what makes college basketball so much fun. Like I just think, dude, I always love when people tell me, "Oh, the NBA is better than college basketball." And I'm like, "Tell me how." I always like to say, like, if you can tell me 5 reasons how the NBA is better than college basketball, I'll be able to understand a little bit better. But man, March Madness is just, and again, like even if it was a crappy tournament, Josh, it's still March
Hmm.
Madness. It's still phenomenal. Like I don't know about you, but I remember in high school when all the kids that had iPads, right, like or you had your laptops, you were allowed in like 11th
Hmm.
grade. The amount of us that had March Madness games on. I'm sorry, Mom. None of us had March Madness games on, or even in college. Like I remember in college going to Bible class, and Dr. Miller's Bible class, and you just look around and there's like
Mm.
there's like seven dudes that just have like multiple games going on their computer screen, right? Like those are the memories that I'll always remember, or some of the great moments of the games. And again, this tournament was no different. And to see UConn, congrats to UConn of hoisting up that trophy.
I'm gonna read off real quick. I know I've been critical of how my bracket was and how I was like 16% after the first
I
round.
have not even looked since
I
like
want
the
it.
oh
I
geez, I
want it
don't know.
to be known that my bracket finished 76.1%. I got the national champion right. And out of the two groups that I was in, I finished fifth out of 9 people and fourth out of 15.
Oh gosh. Jeez. Do you want
I
to
f-
know how bad mine was?
you can rattle it off if you want.
Oh
I still don't think
gosh.
76%. I could have been way better, obviously, but I think having
So you're
the
saying
national champion right.
the percentage that you got right, is that what you're saying?
I don't know if that's the percent I got right or if it's like the percentile that my bracket ranked in. It's just like
Oh, then I
ESPN's
beat
tournament
you.
challenge.
Oh, then I beat you.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I don't
my
know which app do you usually do it through?
ESPN.
Okay,
So
yeah. So like this shows like where you
the
rank, your
rank, yeah,
percent, and
yeah.
the
So my
points. Yeah.
rank was 3.9 millionth. Great.
Oh, I'll tell you my rank too. It's probably in the millions though, yeah, if I can find it.
It should be at the top. Like you'll see it. Like I got mine up right here. Should be in the
Is
top
that
left.
oh, 6.3 million. Yeah.
So I was 85% correct at 1100 points. Now let me just see the groups I was in, and let's see how bad I finished. Let's go fifth and goal,
Yeah,
because that's
I
gonna
forgot to get into that one, so I don't
so
know how I rank.
because I chose UConn, that saved me. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
someone that chose freaking Auburn to win. I'm so sorry. Um, I finished sixth. And do what? Delaney, which I believe that is Aaron's sister-in-law, she got 97.8% in that
Hmm.
percentile. Someone named Pickleballin got 96 percentile. Dude, I actually finished sixth is actually really impressive to me. What did Aaron Lynn finish? That's what I all need to care about. Oh, he finished 18th. He had North Carolina win it all. Thank you.
Mm,
Thank you, Aaron Lynn. I beat you. I just want that to be known. I beat
I
Aaron
appreciate
Lynn.
the pick though, Aaron.
It's just very
The
funny to
faith.
me. Where did I want to know where Johnny Gaunt? Because if I beat Johnny Gaunt, then I know I've done something correct here at this point. I don't think Johnny did one this year.
He didn't even do
Sad
one in
Johnny.
his own.
Sad Johnny.
Ah,
Sad. But anyways, I finished sixth in my group, and that's fine. I finished better than Josh, so that's all that matters in the end. It's really
made a
all that
comeback
matters.
from dead last to middle of the pack. I'll
Hey,
take it.
that's there you go. Hey, and we both had the
Yeah,
champion, so technically we're winners
for sure.
for
Uh,
sure.
we ain't done talking about college basketball yet today,
We're
Ben,
not. Yes.
because right before the national championship game kicks off, breaking news: John Calipari is not fired, but leaving Kentucky for the Arkansas job.
Dude, Arkansas Razorbacks. What
The
a place.
Arkansas job. What the heck? Where'd that come from? Apparently, there's like some connections there. He's really good friends
With a billionaire.
with a billionaire that's in the Tyson chicken empire that's a donor over there. So people are just like drooling at the NIL possibilities that there could be over there. But there was a lot of discussion about whether John Calipari's future was even with Kentucky after losing
Maybe he
to
was
14 seed
politely
Oakland.
maybe he
The
was
AD,
politely asked, "Hey, would you look at other jobs? Just think about it." I feel like maybe that was the conversation.
that's how this seems to me. But Kentucky's AD actually put a statement out at the end of the game saying that that John Calipari is going to be their coach next year because there was a lot of discussion about that. But then next thing you know, he's taken off. I'll actually go ahead and give you a summary of what Kentucky's last few seasons have been. So the last 3 seasons they've been in the tournament. They've lost in the first round, two of those three, and lost in the second round in the middle one there. And then they went 2 years before that without even making an appearance in the tournament. One of those was, of course, because of COVID, and then the other one was because they went 9-16. So John might have been losing an edge a little bit. Like we've seen it in football where Alabama doesn't have the depth they used to because Nick Saban used to
Or
stack. And we
Dabo
talk about all
Sweeney.
these wide receiver and running back rooms that would be there, but now with NIL and transfer portal, you can't really hold on to that depth. And Kentucky can't just have like 7 or 8 really good freshmen and sophomores on a roster anymore. Maybe that's contributing to it. But with him leaving, Kentucky now is in a spot where they already got someone that's entered the portal already. They got a freshman that's declared for the draft, and they got 4 5 stars coming in next year that hopefully they get a new head coach that can retain them. But kind of a
Arkansas
tough situation for
Razorbacks.
Kentucky to be in.
So
But
weird.
yeah,
Arkansas.
let's talk about that Arkansas. Like that
Just weird, dude.
in the conference, it seems like a step down to me as well.
It seems like he wants to like not retire, but he wants to find a job that's like more calm and there's
Not
not
as
as
much
much
pressure.
pressure. Yeah, not as much pressure is what I'm thinking. He wants to be able to make his millions and yeah, still win games, obviously, but like not feeling that pressure because like Arkansas is not a basketball powerhouse, so not feeling that pressure of like, oh, I have to win a certain amount of games every year. I have to go so far every single year.
Right.
And maybe he gets that love back to coach and to keep coaching.
Yeah, I think it was Musselman that was the coach before that took the job at
Yep.
USC, and he had a couple NBA guys come through, which made them one of the more interesting teams as of recent. But obviously, Arkansas is much more known for what they do on the football field than the basketball court right now. So that's what is interesting. But the fun discussion now, Ben, is who is Kentucky going to go out and hire?
Yeah.
Because you think about Kentucky like as a job, you got North Carolina, Duke, Kansas, maybe UCLA. You could throw UConn in that mix, and Kentucky. It's like one of those top 5 to top 10 jobs in the country. It seems like they always got that power to be able to maybe lure some of those bigger time coaches over to them. Some of
Yeah.
the names that I've seen thrown out have been, of course, Dan Hurley,
Who's
which it
turned that
doesn't.
down? He shot that down real quick.
Yeah, he said that that's not happening, but you got to think, could they maybe pull Matt Painter from Purdue or Bruce Pearl from Auburn or Shaka Smart from Marquette or maybe get Jay Wright to come out of retirement? Like these are all like reasonable moves
Yeah.
to me, but would have been some like, has there been any like former players that have maybe even come to mind? It doesn't seem like Kentucky needs to get like a young up and coming coach. I
No,
think they could mostly go out and get whoever they
I
want.
I think they lean towards maybe not like an old veteran coach, maybe not a super young coach, somewhere in the middle. Like Shaka Smart, that just seems like a really good fit. Maybe because he can is a younger guy. Not I mean not young, but he's a younger guy. The Bruce Pearl one is interesting to me. I just don't see it. I don't really see that fit. Plus he was at Tennessee. I just don't think you go to Tennessee, Auburn, and then you go to Kentucky. That just sounds like a bad idea. Um, the one that's very interesting to me that I've heard thrown around is Bryce Drew from Baylor. I think that one is a very interesting one. Obviously, he's a
Scott Drew?
Midwest Scott Drew. Yeah, sorry, Scott Drew, which is a very interesting one. Again, that's just one that's up in the air. I think one name to keep an eye on is Miller from Xavier. I think he's not too far from where he's at now. Do people take a risk with him again at a big time job? That's fascinating to me. I think a couple other names that I think maybe Matt Painter. I don't see him leaving Purdue. He's a kind of a Purdue guy. I don't really see him leaving. I do agree with Jay Wright. I think Jay Wright might be the one that they flash enough money at him that you see Jay Wright decide to, hey, maybe I can get that motivation back. I mean, some other names that come to mind is maybe like Bob Huggins, right? That's his name, because he's technically not
Yep.
retired. He just got fired, pretty much. So that would be an interesting one. Um, Another interesting one for me. Someone said on like Ohio State posts and stuff. Someone said Thad Matta. I just think that'd be
Oh
hilarious.
man.
Like Thad Matta in Kentucky. That'd be one heck of a way to go, right? But no, I don't
Hmm.
really have anybody that super up and coming. I guess that could fit. Do you go get an NBA coach, like an assistant NBA coach that comes back, maybe to the college ranks? I don't know. I'm very interested to see what they do here. Obviously, they have money's no object. Like they can spend as much as they want on that. They don't have to pay for like a buyout or anything either. So that
Right.
really they're paying just for the coach. But yeah, or do they go in house? I don't really know what they're gonna do. I could see is it Kelvin Sampson from Houston? That's another
Yeah.
interesting name. I think that to be honest, that name and Shaka Smart are the two that like they're not at huge jobs right now.
I didn't even think about Samson.
But
Yeah.
I think Samson, who obviously had some rough times in Indiana, maybe he has that rebound of like going to get a big job. I think Samson, Shaka Smart, and I'm going to throw. Miller from Xavier in there. I think those are the three names. I think they're not at big time jobs where they're really not moving down or sideways. It's more of like these all three guys are going to move up in the world. And I mean, how much farther you can take Houston if you're Kelvin Sampson? Like, how much more money are you going to get?
Yeah,
Right, that's the
that's kind of
question.
why I thought Matt Painter too, because this is as far as I think Purdue's ever gone in most of
Yeah,
our lifetimes. It's really hard to get this far over there for whatever reason it is. But yeah, I could see all those too. I like the Kelvin Sampson one. I didn't even think about that, but that'd be
yeah. I
that'd
just
be
I try to
sweet.
look at guys that maybe are that are like not necessarily non-power five, but like around the edge, if that makes sense. Like they're
Yeah,
teams that can compete at the I think a name that is this name will never happen, but I think it's a very unique name to think about. The head coach, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, even though I just said that. Coach from Gonzaga.
Mark
He's
Few.
been there for how many years and he only gets them so far. Does Mark Few say, screw it? Why not I go and coach at Kentucky where I can still develop, I can still do that, but also maybe have more of a shot at things?
I feel like if Mark Few hasn't left there now, I don't think he's ever going to. I think he's there for life because in his time, we've seen the Kansas job come about, the Duke job come about, the North Carolina job come about, the
Yeah.
UCLA, the Kentucky a couple times, and he's never left. And I'm sure he's gotten calls for
Oh,
some of
for
these
sure.
other big time jobs that have come about because it's like you consistently win over there. And it's like you said, there's like a ceiling over there at some of these
And
places.
I think he's hit
Whereas
it.
Kentucky's got the facilities and the resources and the donors and the history, and you're always going to have more potential to win over there.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's going to be interesting. I would assume that Kentucky's going to try to make this happen in the next day or
They have
two.
to because those five stars, I'll tell you that once Calipari takes that job at Arkansas, his five phone calls are going to be to those five dudes that are going to be transferring.
Oh
I
yeah,
guarantee it. Those
Tampere
five
City,
dudes that are
baby.
and dude, don't even get me started on tampering. Oh, there's so many things going on right now. The amount of times where you see things reported before the transfer portal opens, and you see these random guys, they're like, "Oh, I'm in the transfer. I'm intend the word intend to go in the
Intend
transfer
to
portal." I'm like,
transfer. Yep.
so technically, then you're saying people have talked with you, so
Yeah.
illegal.
Right. Uh, I think we also have to give a shout out to Caitlin Clark's career that
Oh,
came to
absolutely.
an
Yeah, we
end.
should. Yeah,
The women's Final Four overall, I think the games just were setting viewership records for women's
oh yeah.
basketball
I mean,
all weekend.
let's be honest. Caitlin Clark is the greatest women's basketball player we've ever seen.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that's even a hesitant. Like some people say Candace Parker. I'm like, no, she's better than Candace Parker. Like I don't think we've seen someone be able to, you know, compete at that level, if that makes sense. And to consistently score at that level.
yeah. She's obviously gotten a lot of love over the time for putting attention on women's basketball, but it's been fun for me, I guess, this weekend to watch a lot of these WNBA players and like the woman whose record that she had broke, scoring record, come out and say that Caitlin Clark has in fact not broken her record or whatnot. It's like, aren't you guys like all about women's empowerment and
Equality.
shedding light on the stars? And it's just
Yeah,
like at
it's
the end of the day, women just all hate each other and women that are more successful than them, it seems like. But
it's like weird because I think when we saw like LeBron break all those records, like you never saw a guy be like, "Oh no, I score more points than him. Like I'm better than him." Like no, it's like tap the guy
Kareem
on the shoulder, like
Abdul-Jabbar saluted him as he
yeah,
should have.
like and I agree with the women. Like like I think Caitlin Clark, like you tell me one person like this is the thing. It's not like Caitlin Clark just did this in like 2 years. She played 4 years of college basketball and did this every
Was it
single
four or
year.
three?
Four. She did 4 years. She had 4 years. And she
All right.
averaged over 20, like 24 points a game for 4 years, which is people don't realize how hard that is in college basketball.
Yeah, I think Dawn Staley did it the best at the end after South Carolina. I mean, they've been incredible too, like 109-3 the last 3 years or
That's
whatever it is. But
stupid.
yeah, Dawn gave her a shout out and thanked her for the light that she has shed on their game and
Yeah.
their sport and for making it as great as it has been.
Well, even like
Uh,
the big three offered 5 million to Caitlin Clark to play for 1 year. We'll
mhm.
give you 5 million, and that's like it's unheard of. But that's who she is now. Now again, we won't get into the debate of can she compete at the NBA level, which I've heard people
That's
say.
silly and stupid and
It's
not worth
silly.
talking about.
It's not worth talking about because I'm just going to say this one word: biology.
She can
That's
be
all
the
I'm going to
best
say.
women's player, and that can be enough.
Yeah, like Serena Williams, she's not going to go and beat Roger Federer. Sorry, it's just not
Yeah.
happening. It's
But
reality.
my favorite take on all of that, like the Caitlin Clark hate, was the flashback to LeBron as a high school prospect, and after the Cavs, or there was talk of the Cavs taking him number one. The Cavs were obviously as bad as they were, and there was interviews with the players about how they thought LeBron was going to do, and they were all like similar stuff, like, oh, once he has to start playing grown men, it ain't going to be all sunshine and
Then he
rainbows,
goes
or he's going to have
dominates.
to earn his keep over here. And then first game goes off for like 25-5. It's like these guys knew that their jobs were about to like be lost over to this high school kid that was like a prodigy and a big time talent coming. They were just trying to get out ahead of it or try to spin the narrative. And it didn't work because like talent prevails. And I think Caitlin Clark's talent's going to prevail. She's going to be a successful WNBA player, just as many of the other college stars before her have been.
Yeah, like I think she is just so fun to watch. Like she plays that carefree attitude, but also like that drivenness that she has, if that's even a word. Like I think, and I agree. Like someone asked her, like, what does it mean to have people that look at you as a role model or as an idol or as like someone that they are chasing to be like? And I think she was kind of stunned, but that's what she's doing. She's making so many little girls like want to come out and play basketball, and that is like one of the coolest things I think that you can take away of.
Yeah. Obviously the all-time leading scorer in all college basketball. She leaves.
Now,
She was
without the with the 3 point line, we want to make Pete Maravich probably would be the
sure.
all time leader if there was 3 point line.
Yeah. Um, she also was Fanatics top earner in NIL with people buying her jerseys and her merch. Like they
Yeah,
always give a cut to those players, which is crazy. I just wish she could have gotten a ring, man. She made it to two national championships, and there were just
she's
two
Dan
better teams
Marino.
on the other
She's
end
Dan Marino.
ultimately. Yeah, unfortunately, but still one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest in women's basketball. Think
Agreed.
think that's the most we've ever talked about basketball on a show, and definitely
That is
college
true.
basketball.
That's most we talk about women's
So
college basketball. Sorry.
probably the most we've talked about women's college basketball too. Yeah, you're right. But there's just been a lot of fun stories. Like you said, there haven't really been like a lot of events, but there's been a lot of fun stories and discussions like this. And this is going to be another one that we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up here is the
Yeah.
pitcher injuries. So
Oh.
you can
Oh,
imagine how in
geez.
shambles I was, Ben, when the
Oh,
news
I
came out
know.
that
That's why I
Shane
shared that.
Bieber was going to be receiving Tommy John surgery after throwing back-to-back 6 innings of shutout baseball, leading all baseball in strikeouts. And I was on this show talking about how excited I was seeing this from him after
I
talking
think it was
about
like the
him being
next
traded
day.
last year and
It was like
falling
the
off.
next
Yeah,
day.
literally like the next day, I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. So our season, obviously, we're going to finish dead last now, and we enjoyed our little run while it lasted at the top of the AL Central, but it's not going to be much longer. But then you get the news about Spencer Strider possibly needing some elbow surgery as well. There's some UCL issues there, and there's actually a pretty large list right now of guys that are on the IL right now, either to start the year or that have been put on since the year started. So
Yeah, I can
there's
read
some.
I can read the names because I have the
We
list.
got
Yeah,
I
you
got
got
the
the list
list
too.
too.
Yeah.
Garrett Cole, Jacob DeGrom, Shohei Ohtani, Sandy Alcantara, Strider's most likely, Shane McClanahan, Max Scherzer. We already mentioned Bieber, Justin Steele, some other notable ones: Sonny Gray, Clayton Kershaw,
Brandon
Justin
Woodruff.
Verlander, Robbie Ray, Eduardo Rodriguez, Gavin Williams, Lucas Giolito, Lance McCullers Jr., Dustin May, Alex Cobb, Tony Gonsolin. Like there's a lot more on here that we could throw out there, but those are like all the big ones. And it's got to make you wonder, or at least the topic of discussion has been, have all these recent rule changes contributed to these increasing elbow injuries? And we're not just talking about the pitch clock, which started last year, and then they decided to shorten it again this year, which is obviously cutting in on recovery time, making you throw more pitches in a short amount of time, but also the fact that you can't use substances anymore. Obviously, Garrett Cole with the spider tech was a big discussion. And Tyler Glasnow has come out and said that he loved using sunscreen and rosin, and he's noticed the difference since he's not been able to use that, getting the grip, and then the new baseball in general. All these things have been changing, and you got obviously the younger kids pitching from a younger age, more so year round, maybe contributing to some burnout there. And it's got to make you wonder, man, when you used to look at Nolan Ryan back in the day, nobody cared about pitch count. Dude was throwing like 200 pitches a night, hitting 100 miles an hour, pitching until he was 50 years old. Like what changed? Are we seeing like just a lot more effort? Everybody's like throwing as hard as they can because spin rates matter all the time now, and velocities like sexy and whatnot, or do all these rule changes have something that's contributing to it? It's an interesting discussion. I think there's a lot more factors here going on, but I think MLB's got to do something about it. The Players Association already put a statement out that they're disappointed that the league has ignored their concerns about rule changes, and now they're, I guess, seeing it, all come to fruition. Like, yep, this is what we expected.
Yeah, and I'll touch on a couple of things you said, Josh. One, that list is sad. Like Josh, like it reminds me of like a list, like you go to like
That's
graduation.
like the AL and NL All-Star
It
rosters.
is. It's true. Like I think someone said like you could have like multiple starting rotations in that with that group. No, but to be honest with you, man, it's really sad. And as a former pitcher, as someone who pitched, growing up then in high school, like, look, I'll say this. I the one thing I'm glad my dad definitely instilled in me was that I wasn't going to throw sliders or curveballs or any other those kind of torque motion with your elbows until I was like in middle school or high school. And you hit the nail on the head, right? You said these guys are throwing so hard from a young age and throwing all this junk. Like I've heard of guys that are 9 years old throwing curveballs. Like, dude, when I'm 9 years old, I'm just trying to get the ball across the plate, right? And I think the biggest thing, Josh, is that it's not like I think this is it's these kids are throwing so many pitches. It's not the pitches, because like you said, Nolan Ryan threw a bunch. Jamie Moyer pitched till he was like 60, right? Like it's about what you do with your arm, and so many of these kids throw so much junk. Like I remember pitching growing up, and I threw a fastball, a splitter, a changeup, and like a two-seam fastball. I threw 4 pitches. None of them were huge torque on my arm or my elbow, and I think just master those kind of pitches. And again, I'm not saying don't throw curveball or slider, but hey, how about we save it until the kid is 18, 19 years old, maybe 17, whatever. But the other thing I want to touch on is that you said that the rule changes. Look, I've thrown like bullpen sessions when I had to throw a lot of pitches in a short amount of time, and it does wear on your arm. And could it be the problem? I don't know. Like there's obviously science behind it and stuff, but the fact that you have a lot of these dudes that are in great shape that have had no injury history, that's the other thing, Josh. I know we talk about all the time injury history. Some of these dudes have no injury history. It's not like their arms are always beat up and these dudes are just dropping like flies. And it's scary. It's scary to think that, you might have a rotation that maybe you were the top rotation, but then in, who knows, in 3 weeks, you might have the worst rotation because you're just having to plug and fill. And I think it's something that the Players Association obviously has brought up in the past. And I think this is what the MLB needs to take this in action and either take away some of those rule changes. Like I always thought the pitch clock was stupid. I'll be honest with you. I've always have. And some people disagree with me. They're like, well, the games are quicker. I'm like, dude, I chose to go to a baseball game because I knew it was going to be 4 hours of boredom at times. That's why I decided to go to a
I
baseball game.
never wanted to be like, dang, what'd be great is if like I got to watch less baseball.
Yeah, like it doesn't make sense to me. And we were at a baseball game. We were at the Reds game with Rebecca last year or last summer. And that was something I noticed was like, it just didn't feel the same, I guess. Like, cause I felt like everything was rushed. Everything's in a hurry. You're trying to hurry. You have all these other rules. Like we just want to make it for new audience. Like, look, if you don't like baseball, you're not going to love baseball by like just watching baseball. Sorry. Unless you've played it, it's really hard just to watch baseball, and get to enjoy it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
I'm going to read some thoughts from some of the players that I thought have been more interesting. So this is Justin Verlander first, one of those players on the list, said that he thinks the pitch clock is the easiest thing to point out right now, but in reality, probably one of the smaller things, but thinks everything's had a little bit of influence in this. He thinks one of the bigger factors is once they changed the balls and they started flying out, because everybody's hitting home runs. They're
Yeah.
not juiced though, Rob Manfred says. But after the home run started like going up, he said it changed how he had to approach pitching. He wanted the swing and the miss, and so now guys are throwing as hard as they possibly can and spinning the ball as hard as they possibly can because they got to get that swing and miss. So
Yeah.
a lot more stress, a lot more force being put on there. And then Alex Wood had a really interesting take on here too. Uh, a former pitcher. I don't know if he's still pitching, but he came to the league in 2012, and as soon as the season ended, he wouldn't touch a baseball until at least December, he said. So season ends, if you don't make the playoffs, it's ended at the end of September. Um, at the end of October, if you're in the playoffs, and he wouldn't even touch a baseball, he said when he first came to the league until about December, he'd give himself some time off the mound of not even throwing anything whatsoever. Sometimes that'd even be until January. And now it's like
Off-season
guys are
programs,
throwing off-season programs, right, which are supposed to be injury preventative,
but it
allegedly,
seemed to
is
cause more injuries.
right. Like you're throwing year round now to prevent injury, but it seems like we're getting even more injuries now than
I would
before.
be fascinated to see the number of guys that don't throw that are currently in the Major League Baseball. Guys that don't throw um, outside of the season. I'd be really interested to see how they are health wise because I think that would tell you a lot. Like if you compare them side by side, guys that played about the same amount of time.
Yeah, guys that like didn't pitch until like December, January compared to guys that threw the whole time. Yeah, I don't know. Um, it does seem like a lot of things have changed though, and so now it's created the problem that we got now.
Yeah,
And how do you rewind that? I mean, the MLB isn't going to just change
we
like
know the MLB won't do
7 or 8
that. Like they
rules.
don't. They
Yeah,
don't.
they're not going to do that. So it's kind of up to the pitchers, I guess. Like, are they going to throw not as hard every pitch? Are they going to be more worried about pitching instead of just throwing?
I don't know, man. It's I think as a pitcher, you pitch your best stuff, and that's just reality. It's up to the owners and um just Major League Baseball itself, and we know that none of them ever usually want what's best. At least it seems like
Yeah.
at times. So yeah, at the end of the day, you just got to do what you got to do and
Yeah.
keep your arm
If
as
you're
healthy
not
as
gonna
possible.
if you're not gonna change any of the rules, I don't really know what the solution is because guys are throwing less pitches and less innings
And yet
than
they're
ever
getting hurt
before
more.
already as it is. It's like, do you really have to throw in a sixth starting pitcher into a rotation? And then this is what else is interesting is I saw this take. Could it be possible that pitchers are looked at as running backs in the future, where you have a short shelf life of maybe 3 to 5 years tops, and so you don't get any more of the big contracts that we've seen Clayton Kershaw or Garrett Cole
Or
get in
Steven
recent
Strasburg,
years?
who just retired, who had like a
Yeah.
huge, 7 year was at 225.
It's like
Like
225, and I think he made 45 starts on that contract
it's
in
reality, man.
5 years.
It's a reality, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Hope baseball can get that worked out. But anything else been exciting to you in the
Nothing,
baseball world?
nothing
Only
crazy
about
baseball
two
other than
weeks
the
in.
fact that the
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Pirates somehow are leading the NL Central, which I'm my oh, I guess we could talk about Ellie De La Cruz's night last night. Did you hear his stat line? Do you want me to read his stat line to you?
I saw it. I don't recall it though, so go ahead and
And
refresh.
just
Tell everybody what he did.
tell me how crazy this is. Okay, this was his stat line. If I can find it here somewhere. Oh, here we go. Here it is. This is his night. He had a home run for both sides of the plate. He had an over the fence home run and inside the park home run. He had four runs scored, and he stole a base. He's the first player in Major League history to do all that in the same game.
Mm.
This guy now has a 15-game hit streak going back to last year, and it leads the majors right now. I'm telling you, if he figures out how to hit the curveball, which it seems like he's figuring out, and he's bunting now too. Like, I'm sorry, how do you defend him? Because the difference between him and O'Neal Cruz, and I always believe this, is that O'Neal Cruz is not necessarily a true burner, and he's also like more of just like I'm going to try to hit it as far as I can, and of course he can do that if you look at the highlight from the home run the other night. But man, like he even was asked after the game, by the way, in English, which he just learned English, and he answered in English, and he said, they asked him, "Is your running your favorite part of the game?" He's like, "Absolutely." Like his favorite part of the game is running, and it's yeah, Ellie De La Cruz, man. Put it on your notes right now. I would not be shocked if he runs away with some awards this year. Yeah, he's a phenomenal player.
Let me read you the most Mike Trout stat
Oh,
of
I
this
saw
season
this. This is
so far.
hilarious.
So, Ben, Mike Trout has 5 home runs this
Mhm.
season, which is tied for first in the league. Do you
Yep.
want to know how many RBIs he has?
5.
It's actually 6, but all of his home runs have contributed to just 5 RBIs.
That shows you how bad the Angels are, and the
And
fact
his
that he
last 10
wants to
home runs that
stay,
he's hit have all been solo shots, too.
and the fact that he wants to stay in Anaheim is beyond me. Is
Yeah.
beyond me.
Yeah, Trout got his first non-home run RBI last night against Tampa Bay with a triple that scored Anthony Rendon. Who would have thought Rendon was going to get on base to even be able to score? But,
Jeez.
geez, yeah. Poor Mike Trout. But,
Yeah, man. So outside of that, like nothing's really surprised me. I mean, obviously we talked about it a little bit last week, but yeah, the Reds are hanging in there. It's like the freaking Pirates wouldn't be just running away right now. Then they're playing the Brewers, who had their number last year, and obviously seeing the Guardians do well is always good. Now, will they keep it up? I don't know. Same with the Reds, but hey, it's fun, man. That's what I love about baseball, man.
mm-hmm.
Anything
Good
you want to
stuff.
add? Anything you want to add, or shall we wrap it up? Shall we wrap it up?
I think that's a show, man.
Show
Heck of
man,
a
we
show.
won't talk about the UFL. Sorry, don't really care. So we don't really want to talk about that, other than a guy kicked 264 plus yard field goals in back-to-back games. So kind of cool, kind of dope,
Yeah.
kind of cool. And also there was WWE events, but I don't think we've ever
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about WWE.
SmackDown happened over the weekend, too.
Yeah, WrestleMania happened. Roman Reigns lost his titles to Cody Rhodes. Yeah, Cody Rhodes.
Bummer, man.
The Rock showed up again, and so did John Cena. So childhood unlocked. But anyways, you know what isn't unlocked? Your chance to view the podcast every single week. Oh, segue. But if you have enjoyed this week's episode of the podcast on YouTube, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you love listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you share it with your friends and family. That allows us to see that you're enjoying the content and you want to see more of it. Please let us know down below what you would like us to talk about more. Obviously, we'll have more baseball coming up here. We'll have more college because the portal is opening, transfer portal. So we'll have more talk about that, obviously, probably in the future weeks or so. And obviously, our final mock draft will be coming out. And that should be fun because Josh and I will be totally wrong, or I'll brag like I do every time that I get a couple picks right. Because that's what we do. That one I got right. Anyways, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week. Hope you have a great weekend. Go enjoy the sunshine. We didn't even talk about the solar eclipse. There won't be any this weekend, but go enjoy the sunshine. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Until next time, we'll see ya.